All right. So, welcome to the 25% design public hearing for the Lowell Tiger Bridges project. We made it this far. If you haven't signed in, please sign in. If you haven't yet picked up an information packet, please pick up an information packet. On the back is a place to provide some written comments. Anything you hear tonight, anything you want to comment on, you can fill this out tonight. And give it to myself or one of the other consultants who's here, or you can mail it to me, care of Department of Planning and Development over here in City Hall. We also have a website, lowellbridges.com. Currently set up to take comments or no?
Just
Not
email.
yet.
Just email.
Just email. All right. So you can email me through that website as well with any comments. So. All right, so the agenda for this evening, obviously project overview. We're going to go through each bridge, looking at the conditions and then the design plans, also the project schedule, and then any questions that we have, or comments that you want to make at the end. So we'll start with kind of the basics. To review, the city was awarded I didn't introduce myself either. I'm Claire Bricker. I'm the Chief Design Planner at the City of Lowell. It's so funny because we've had this conversation before. We always forget to introduce ourselves. So, Claire Bricker, I'm the Chief Design Planner at the City of Lowell. So, the city was awarded a $13.4 million federal Tiger grant funding to reconstruct or rehabilitate 6 canal bridges last fall. And a major reason that we won this funding was a really innovative strategic partnership that was put together by the city, UMass Lowell, and Enel to make this project happen. We've had the support of many other community partners in this project, in particular the Lowell National Historic Park and DCR, for that matter, the Department of Conservation and Recreation. So, in addition to the federal government, the city, the University, and Enel have contributed significant funds to this project. The partnership is ultimately paying for the full cost of the design on an extremely compressed schedule. In fact, when we won this grant, what the city heard was there were not many applications that had this kind of public-private partnership support. So at the commencement of construction, while the actual project itself only encompasses 6 canal bridges, at the commencement of construction, the city will own 8 canal bridges. We will be acquiring the bridges from Enel. The Kearney Square Bridge is complete. The Broadway Street Bridge still under construction at this time, but the city will also be taking ownership of those. So the Tiger Grant, highly competitive process. This grant is the largest public grant the city's received in 10 years. The largest Tiger Grant Lowell has ever received. Tiger Grants are often given in full requested amounts, and they're very infrequently given to cities. The grant requires significant state and federal oversight. The city is working with the Federal Highway Administration and MassDOT to properly administer the grant, including holding public input sessions, such as this one, and giving the community opportunities to comment and weigh in on the project. Based on the strength of the city's application and the worthiness of the project, the grant was successful. Lowell is a major transportation hub from New Hampshire and in the Merrimack Valley. We are also an established and growing education and economic hub as well. The current state of the bridges result in vehicle weight restrictions and closures that impact public safety. Fire trucks and other large public safety vehicles will not be able to take the most direct route at times. It impacts traffic congestion. I think some of you experienced that tonight. With school buses, UMass buses, and LRTA buses, it's impacting commerce with deliveries and circulation of goods. It impacts tourism with the Lowell National Historic Park canalways. Some crossings are difficult, if not impassable. And so the state of the bridges right now just hinders basic transportation efficiency in and throughout downtown Lowell and adjacent areas. So the Tiger Grant project will result in ownership of 6 vastly improved canal bridges and 2 new canal bridges. City ownership of these bridges will allow us to apply for public funding for repairs and maintenance that's more readily available to a public entity. Some of our responsibilities as a Tiger Grant recipient, we need to be ready to do the work. We need to be ready to build and or rebuild these bridges by June 30th of this year, which is 3.5 months. We've been told there are no extensions for this grant. It would take an act of Congress to grant us an extension, and that would delay the project for quite a while. And so I'm here tonight to reintroduce you to this project and to present the work that we've accomplished since our last meeting in September, and to continue the community conversation that was started when we made the grant application. This is also a meeting that is required as part of the design process, and so we have a few kind of regulatory things that we also need to get through. So I'm going to turn it over to Pam Marquis, who's going to talk a little bit about right-of-way.
Thank you, Claire. Good evening. In the Commonwealth, acting through its Massachusetts Department of Transportation, Highway Division, indicated it would administer this project for funding under the Title Grant Program. Your municipality accepted certain responsibilities. One of the responsibilities is to acquire all the necessary rights in private and public lands for the design, construction, and implementation of this project. My function is to review and recommend procedures that your municipality will utilize in acquiring these rights. The procedures used must comply with both federal and state regulations. The current design plan indicates that fee acquisitions, permanent easements, and temporary easements will be required for this project. Your municipality may acquire the needed rights through a combination of donations, eminent domain, deed grants, permits, or rights of entry. Frequently, local municipalities will appeal for donations. The donation procedure minimizes the acquisition cost to your community. This project cannot be advertised until the new proposed right-of-way is secured and the Right-of-Way Bureau issues a federal aid right-of-way certificate. Affected property owners' rights are protected under our Massachusetts general laws, primarily Chapter 79, and because this project is receiving federal funds, the property owners' rights are further defined under Title III of the Real Property Act 1970 as amended. I will be happy to answer any questions concerning right-of-way activities during the open forum. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Doug Peterson. I'm the project manager for Kleinfelder, who's the prime designer for this project. To give you a high-level overview of the 6 bridges with this project. We have the 2 Pawtucket Street bridges, one over Northern Canal, one over Pawtucket Canal. Those bridges are complete replacements. We have the Suffolk Street over Northern Canal. That bridge is a superstructure replacement with substructure rehabilitation. We have Merrimack Street over Western Canal and Central Street over Pawtucket Canal. Those 2 bridges are deck replacements with some substructure modifications. And Merrimack Street over Merrimack Canal is a safety rail upgrade. So what are the project goals? First of all, foremost, we want to repair or replace the deficient bridges. We want to remove the load restrictions. We want to improve the safety. As you can see from this picture, you have students basically walking in the roadway. Both the sidewalks have been shut down. Obviously, this isn't a great situation that we want to improve. We want to improve pedestrian access, provide bicycle accommodations, adding bike lanes where we can, and obviously, Lowell being a historic town, we want to retain or replicate all the historic elements, including historic rails and historic canal walls. So the project status in terms of permitting, just to give you an update, the entire project, as you can see, this is the Lowell Historic District. All our 6 bridges are located in the Historic District. We have had several meetings with the Lowell Historic Board and the National Park Service. We do have their preliminary concurrence to move forward with the project based on those meetings. For the entire project, we are using historically sensitive rails, and there are some impacts to the historic canal walls, but they're minimized to the greatest extent possible, and those have all been reviewed with the Historic Board and the National Park. So construction staging, just to give you a high-level view of how we plan to stage the project. The Pawtucket over Northern Street Bridge, that will be closed to vehicles, but we will have a pedestrian bridge. There is obviously a lot of students that cross over that bridge. We have the Pawtucket Street over Pawtucket Canal. That's going to be a single lane, alternating traffic. got that wrong. Single lane in one direction and then a detour in the other direction. And then when we do the other side of the bridge, we'll flip it. Suffolk Street over Northern Canal, that's going to be a full closure. That bridge was closed not that long ago for repairs, and we're going to take the same approach for a longer duration. We have the Central Street Bridge over Pawtucket Canal. That one's a complex one. We have to do 3 stages there due to the high traffic volumes. And we have Merrimack Street over Western Canal, Merrimack Street over Merrimack Canal. Those will be 2 stages where we're going to maintain 2 lanes. So construction impacts. There will be some construction impacts. It is construction. We do have some work in the canal systems. We have to do some dewatering. There will be some impacts to the National Park boat tours. We're going to do everything possible to minimize those impacts, but the reality is, to get the work done, there will be some impacts. We will maintain access to all businesses during construction. There are some locations, especially Central and Suffolk, where there are a larger concentration of businesses, but those accesses will be maintained. We're going to maintain pedestrian and bicycle routes and accommodations. And during the construction, the contractor, there'll be provisions in the documents that the contractor will be monitored for noise, air quality, controlling dust. All those things are going to be checked, and any complaints will be vetted through the city, and they'll be addressed with the contractor. So that's kind of a high-level view. I'm going to turn it over to Tom and Joe, our lead bridge and highway engineers, to talk a little bit in more detail about the bridges.
Tom Marshall, I'm the lead bridge engineer for this project. We're going to start off with probably the simplest of the projects, Merrimack Street over Merrimack Canal, just outside the library here. The overall bridge is in pretty good shape. It's a stone masonry arch bridge built in the 1800s, carries 2 lanes of traffic, 1 parking lane. It is currently not posted, and as we get into this, we'll see that pretty much the focus is this ornamental railing on this side, historic ornamental railing. So the bulk of the project revolves around that railing. So what we're trying to do is construct the R2 safety rail to protect the existing sidewalk. That is really what this project boils down to. The load rating is sufficient, so it's a matter of fixing the rail system. This is just a plan view of the same. And this will be kind of a constant theme throughout the plan views. Anything purple is going to be ornamental rail. Anything in light blue is going to be introduction of the BR2 safety rail. And then yellow represents the sidewalk work. So this shows the limits. Here, a pretty straightforward project. I'll let Joe speak a little bit about the right-of-way impacts.
All right, hi, I'm Joe Maliaco. I'm doing the highway design, the utilities, and the right-of-way. Basically, what you see here is the right-of-way plan, property plan, and anything in orange that you see here is basically going to be a temporary easement. So that temporary easement is for contractor lay-down area, contractor to access, rehabbing the rail, refurbishing the rail, and then at the end of the project, everything will be restored in kind. There is one permanent easement at this location. It's really small. It's right here in green. It amounts to approximately 2 square feet. It's for the end of the bridge rail structure. So other than that, this is really just temporary easements for construction at this location.
Joe, it's hard to see the colors. We're going to try to close the lights off so you can see the colors, but you might want to just show the difference between the orange and the green, because it's really hard to see.
I'm sorry, getting in the way here, but this is basically the sidewalk that we said was going to be new. These are the temporary easements. So you see even the temporary easement in the canal, do some work back in here. And the little green piece here is that proposed permanent easement.
All right, next on the agenda is Merrimack Street over Western Canal, which is in the opposite direction. again, built in the early 1800s. This is a single-span, concrete encased steel beam structure. Currently, it has no load posting, but that's a little bit misleading. That is because on this side where the rail is, there is a temporary barrier keeping traffic off of some of the beams that are in poor condition. Essentially, the scope of this project, for the most part, is to replace a small section of the deck as well as the safety rail on each side. It will be done in 2 phases. That's the bulk of the work. There'll be some resurfacing, as well as this is a longitudinal section, kind of a typical, as if you're standing in the canal looking up at the bridge, similar to like an elevation view. We've just shaded what we'll refer to as commonly throughout the night is superstructure, which is just a general term for the elements that span over the canal. And then we'll also use the term substructure, which is essentially the supporting elements, whether it's abutments or on multi-span bridges you have piers. So what's planned at this structure, in addition to replacing a couple of the beams underneath those outside portions, is there are existing struts, steel struts that are out there today. We'll be replacing those struts due to their condition and also introducing similar steel struts on the remaining of the structure. And really that's intended to help stabilize these original abutments. And you'll see here we have some shading. The intent there is to actually put some material back into the channel. It's currently undermined underneath some of the abutments, so we're trying to stabilize the existing substructure. This is just the plan view of what we're planning to do. Again, sidewalks, VR2, this is a bike lane there, and then shoulders. But for all intents and purposes, when it's all said and done, it'll pretty much be consistent with what's out there today. I'll let you know what we talked about.
Okay, from Merrimack Western right away, there are no permanent easements at this location. It's all temporary. And so you can see, again, this orange kind of represents the temporary easement area for the work. Same with down here on the south side. And the reason we need to go so far down this way is because we are going to have water control systems in the canal to help dewater. And in order for the contractor to place those control systems, he's going to need to come down potentially on the side of the bank or on this side, same here, to put that equipment into the canal. So again, those are temporary. They're going to be removed at the end of the project, and everything's going to be restored in time.
So the next bridge is Central Street over the Lower Pawtucket Canal. Very busy area. Again, built in the 1800s. Had some recent rehab work. 2011, it's a 2-span steel beam bridge, big deck. It is currently posted, as you see those values there, and it carries 3 lanes of traffic. So the big portion of this project is essentially the deck. We're looking to replace the entire deck based on the traffic volumes and maintaining traffic and pedestrians through the site. We're planning to do the work in 3 phases. You can see construction joints there. In order to keep everything operational, it's going to be a 3-phase approach. There are a few beams that will be needed to replace as part of the project, as well as some bearings, which is essentially what your steel girders sit on, so there'll be some jacking required of portions of the bridge. The other big element is the substructure piece. For the 2-span bridge, you have the existing abutment, central pier, a second abutment. These are integral parts of the canal wall system. And what we're proposing is to construct what we'll call concrete boat sections within the channel to help stabilize not only the abutments but the pier as well. This is just a plan view similar to the others. Essentially the whole deck system will be replaced. new sidewalks, safety rail, as well as these, we protect and reuse what's out there for ornamental rail. Essentially remove them, repaint them, and refurbish them. They do have historic value like all of the sites.
Okay. Apologize for the scale on this, it's getting smaller, and that's because we need to enlarge the temporary access easements even further away from the bridge itself. The reason we're doing this again is water control for the most part, but also there are some old utilities that run both north and south along these old canal walls that are abandoned and have been abandoned for a long time. So we'd like the opportunity to get in and remove some of those to improve the aesthetics in the area. So we need temporary easements to take those out. And again, that's why you see them extended pretty far away from the bridge location. So here, it's all temporary with the exception of one permanent easement, which is this green box here. I believe it's the University of Mass Building Authority that owns that. The reason for that is both bridge inspection access. It's also to put crushed stone in the canal itself in order to eliminate some scour that happens at the bottom of the pier, or the abutment, if you will. So again, the only permanent easement at Central over Pawtucket is just this area here, and the rest are all temporary to be restored in kind.
So the next bridge is Suffolk Street. This is the one near Wanalancet Mills. An existing 3-span structure, steel low beam composite deck. Currently not posted, but some recent rehab work was done in 2014. There's 2 lanes of traffic. So we're in essence doing what's called a superstructure replacement, which means we're removing the entire upper portion of beams and deck and putting on a new 3-span structure. One of the key elements to this site is we are trying to preserve the nature of the existing piers and existing canal walls, which lends itself to going back with a 3-span bridge, and also helped us minimize the structure depth. And so some of the key elements here, again, DR2 safety rail, new ornamental railing, the consistency between the projects throughout the city, 6-foot bike lane shoulder, and 2 10-foot lanes. One thing that we are doing is similar to the Central Street Bridge, as we are proposing these concrete boat sections again to stabilize the existing abutments, piers. Most of these substructure elements are underwater, so you don't quite realize how tall they are. But when the water gets drawn down, you can see that they're pretty tall, slender elements. This existing pier, we are trying to make it look similar by reusing existing stones above water line so that it appears as it does today in the undrained condition. Similar to the abutments, we're going to be reusing some of the existing stone but cutting them to give the facing that it looks like the original canal wall. Again, just a plan view here. One of the things that we're doing, it's a little tough to see, is the existing bridge has got a taper to it, so it widens out as it gets to the side away from Father Morissette Boulevard. We're proposing to actually straighten that out, remove the angled portion of it, and that suits how it functions today. There's parking along that side, so we didn't feel the need to complicate the structure by adding that element. Again, we have ornamental rails in purple, DR2, safety rail in blue, sidewalks, minimizing the footprint of the project. There is a bridge right here. This is where the canal actually does a 90. There's a gatehouse right here. So some of the complication is tying into this Father Morissette Boulevard as the 2 substructures meet between the 2 bridges.
right, for right-of-way at Suffolk over Northern, there are no permanent easements, there's just temporary easements. Again, it's for dewatering and placing water control systems in the canal. There is some utility work that needs to happen here. There's overhead wires that need to be temporarily relocated out of the way so the contractor can do his work. Those will go back in place at the end. So part of this easement is to accommodate that, as well as the bridge construction and the water control. So very similar theme to basically the other bridges. And if there are specific questions on any of these, I'm available at the end, certainly, if you want to look at certain properties and different elements.
So this is the first of the two replacement projects. Both Pawtucket Street, as Doug mentioned, are replacements. This is Pawtucket Street over Pawtucket Canal, right adjacent to the river. See in the background. Again, built actually prior to 1800s originally. This one is a two-span steel girder bridge composite deck, similar to some of the others. It has the lowest rating of bridges currently. It is a two-lane bridge. Some of the things here that we're really focused on is trying to preserve as much of the canal walls, existing canal walls, as we can. So this is a current condition looking from the roadway surface. This piece was reconstructed in 2011, so actually it's going to mimic pretty much what you're going to see when we're done. One of the issues here today is that the road has been narrowed up due to the addition of a temporary barrier and barrels to keep traffic from impacting the rail on that side. You notice there's a little bit of hump in the road that's going to continue with the proposed condition. So it's just a rendering showing what, in essence, it will look like with the safety rail on each side, ornamental rail matching what's out there today. Pretty straightforward. One thing is we are going to have to stage construct this, as Doug mentioned. The current plan is to keep westbound traffic on the bridge at all times, detour eastbound traffic, and then that westbound will switch phases once we finish constructing this portion of the work. 6-foot sidewalks, 5-foot shoulders, 11-foot lanes, and steel girder bridge. The big change is we are proposing a single span bridge. We're going to be removing that central pier. You'll also notice that our new abutments are behind the existing abutments, and that again is proposed to minimize impacts to those canal walls. There is some channel work proposed essentially for scour protection. There is an existing scour hole out there today near the pier, so our proposal is to protect the existing abutments with riprap or scour protection, large stone, if you will. Just a plan view, similar to the others, ornamental rail in purple, safety rail in blue. We really kind of simplified these plans just because they can get really busy to look at, so try to simplify them as best we could. Again, 2 lanes when you're all said and done.
All right, so talk about busy. You'll notice here that the right-of-way easements have extended quite a bit from the other bridges. So I'll start with that. Basically, the reason for that is that because we're changing the profile grade at the bridge and raising it up slightly, we need to now chase grade in each direction for 150 to 200 feet roughly. And when you do that, it's going to impact the curbs and your sidewalks and some of the driveways. So we need to make sure the contractor has the amount of room he needs to make those improvements to the sidewalks. In this direction here, same with this area, and then same thing on this side and this side. One thing I'll say is on this side, this is all pretty much DCR property. So there's a park here, and the contractor needs laydown area to do his work. So he's probably going to use the majority of this as kind of a laydown area. So anything that he touches, benches, pavement, whatever's there, light poles, those items will all have to be placed in kind if they are disturbed. For permanent easements at this location, this is the most significant area out of the 6. You'll see these 2 rectangular green shapes, and what Tom was referring to were the scour analysis or the scour holes. So in order to put that stone or the riprap in, you need permanent easements to do that. So that's what those 2 big green rectangles are for. There are 2 other areas that require permanent easements. One on this side, it's a 4 by 30 foot, 120 square foot access for future bridge inspection. So you have one of those on either side. And those 2 are on private property. So you have the little motorboat club here, and then a Mr. and Mrs. Plunkett property on this side that are going to require some access in the future for bridge inspection. So again, it's mostly, again, temporary easement with just those areas for permit.
I guess before we leave this slide, one thing I do want to point out is we realize that the boat tours for the National Park go through here. And so what we're currently proposing is a 3-phased approach so that we can at least maintain access under the bridge during construction. So I believe last but not least is the Pawtucket over Northern Canal. This is right near the East Campus of UMass Lowell, and approximately 7,000 to 8,000 students use this bridge a day to get to the North Campus and go across University Ave Bridge. Quite a bit going on at this site. So we have a water control dam structure here, owned by Enel, their main canal and electric plant is run off of the canal behind. We have the existing canal walkway, bumps out here in front of the existing abutment. So we'll have to deal with that during construction. The plan is to protect it in place. You see it's an existing 2-span structure, again, steel, concrete deck, very similar to a lot of the bridges here. That's what we're proposing to put back, with the exception of we're, again, going for a single span. This one is currently posted. This is just a rendering from up top. So the existing condition, the 2 original sidewalks have been shut down and gated off. So students are currently using a portion of the bridge to access it. And then you have the 1 lane heading westbound or southbound from East Campus out onto Morissette Boulevard, which is here. You can see it is buried off as well. So here is a rendering of the finished condition looking in that same direction. You'll notice one of the things, we're trying to maintain that wider, call it multi-use path. That's one of the things that we worked with the university on. We'll keep the 5-foot sidewalk downstream. Again, ornamental rails, safety barrier, VR2 barrier. This is just a section to the bridge showing the exact same thing. So here's the 12-foot multi-use path on the left, 5-foot sidewalk on the right, and a single lane direction, 15-foot lane in the middle. And here's the single span configuration that we're proposing. We had some clearance, minimum clearance values we had to meet over here to maintain the clearance above existing walkway, so we're holding that same clearance. Our proposal is to go and build the abutment in front of the existing abutment. There were some concerns with the stone wing wall in the northeast quadrant that as you're coming up the canal from a historic perspective, that was one of the items that we wanted to maintain, was the look of that stone wall, so we're constructing in front of that. Here's just a plan view of it. One of the things, we found a lot out, you can't notice it, but one of the things is that we're proposing to slightly skew the orientation of the new roadway. And that was done for a couple reasons. One was to minimize the span length. because the existing one spanned longer, kind of along that line. And the other piece was this part of the canal just drops right off, and so we felt it was best to try and get our new wing wall off of that canal drop off in that area.
All right, so this looks somewhat complicated as opposed to the first four, but not as complicated as Pawtucket over Pawtucket. We really only have one permanent easement here. It's on the city of Lowell's property, and that's this shape here. And that is for a proposed wing wall or foundation extension of the bridge. So that's the only permanent easement. The rest are all, temporary easements for construction, both working in the canal, working the new sidewalks back this way, again, working in this area, and working a little bit on this property, which I think is University of Massachusetts. So that would be it really for right-of-way impacts, and turn it back over to Doug.
So schedule, the remaining project schedule, we're right here at the design public hearing. The remaining portions, we have to, between now and the end of June, we have to complete the design. There'll be reviews with Mass DOT and Federal Highway and the City of Lowell. And then the project will go out to bid. We bid ideally July and August, and with an award by September. Construction would start in September and run in September of 2017 and run through September of 2022. So that's a long construction duration. They may finish early, but that's the duration we have right now under the tag grant. Turn it back to you.
Okay, so as I said at the onset of the meeting, any comments, questions, you can contact me. Email lowbridges.com. On this form, put a stamp on it and mail it in. Are there any questions or comments right now?
Do you know when you'll have a construction schedule for kind of the duration of construction of each bridge and the sequencing of which bridges are going to start in which year?
So these are sort of this is the draft duration. At this point, we don't know which bridge will go first, which bridge will go second, which bridge will happen, simultaneously. I think that's a conversation that we need to have with the contractor about what makes the most sense. Obviously, with the park, other stakeholders, we are seeking as much input as we can get at this point from other affected parties, events downtown, things like that. There are things we know about for sure, like the folk festival that we want to work around. There are things like boat tours that we'd like to work around and accommodate as much as we possibly can. Any thoughts or suggestions, anything else that we may need to look at when we're doing the project phasing and the construction schedule, please feel free to comment or otherwise let me know what else we need to consider while we're doing this.
Can you tell me what the speed limits are over the bridges, what the range is, what the slowest and fastest is on speed limits that currently posted?
30? Thanks.
On all of them?
All of
I
them?
don't think any of them are, I think it's all statutory.
Yeah.
I have a question about the sequence too, that you've already answered. For now, a couple of smaller questions on a couple of them. The Pawtucket over the Pawtucket, you're showing shoulders, but you're not showing bike lanes. Is the intent that one day the shoulders may be able to become bike lanes as part of the larger system? Is that why you're reserving that, or is there what is the bike accommodation in that bridge in particular?
Go ahead.
So for that bridge and all of them, where there isn't a continuation of a bike lane off the bridge. We're not showing a stripe right now for that. And the intention would be that, once the rest of the street has a bike lane that can all be properly striped, but there is a danger in that if you stripe it now, and then, it would just be a bike lane for 200 feet of the bridge, and then it would disappear, and we don't want to create an unsafe situation for the bikes and peds, so that's why.
The width is available for people.
That's the design intent, yes, to provide for future striping.
Also related to this bridge, we're looking at the plans back in the back, and it looks like the detour route for this runs right through the heart of South Campus. We may want to talk to folks a little bit about that, and that could create some real safety concerns for us, given the volume of people crossing Broadway with the campus there, and increasing traffic volume, especially heavily in a one-way direction, may be a challenge. I don't know if you've looked at alternatives. I don't think there's a particularly good one, but that may be something we'd like to just be part of the conversation for.
Sure.
So we'll look at that before that gets finalized.
Yeah, we did meet with Nicholas Bossonetta and reviewed all the scenarios for the detours and all the traffic phasing, but we can certainly incorporate UMass Lowell into that conversation. My understanding was it was similar to the one that was being used on Broadway Bridge. But
Well, actually, it's quite the opposite. The Broadway Bridge is closed right now, so the detour actually keeps people off of Broadway to the heart of campus because there's nowhere to go. This one, you'd actually be introducing all the traffic, or a lot of the traffic, which currently goes in one direction through onto this, which would be pretty substantial. So
we can follow up with that with our traffic engineers here and the city. And,
yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. And one final very minor question, I think, is that have you thought at all about the steel delivery route for Pawtucket over the northern, these pretty big beams? Not too many of them, probably a couple days, but what are you envisioning for how they're going to get there?
I mean, the bridge guy answers that.
The short answer is, we talk about sequencing. I think one of the things that's going to have to happen is Pawtucket over Pawtucket is going to have to get built first so that we can transport the beams to Pawtucket over Northern, because Pawtucket over Pawtucket has the lowest rating of all the bridges right now. So essentially coming up, we're going to be in the same situation in Pawtucket over Pawtucket to get the beams there. More than likely, we're going to have to take up a good portion of Father Morissette Boulevard at night to stage those beams, but we envision them coming in that direction, at least preliminarily.
We also have the option of coming up 93 to Methuen and coming up 110.
So that's one of these, it's not a question, but I want to thank you guys for, it looks like some really great across the board, particularly profile of Pawtucket over Northern. Looks like that's going to be a huge improvement from the district's perspective. Several of the others, they look good to see. This is very good to see.
On the first one, Merrimack Street over Merrimack Canal, you have a parking lane. What's the length of that bridge and how many parking spaces are you hoping to get? Or are they already there?
In terms of, they're already there.
Okay.
The condition that we're putting the bridge back in will mimic what's out there. I'm not sure we have a great depiction on our stripped down construction plan that will show it.
Yeah.
You had a cross section before.
Yeah, I think it just showed the width, but didn't necessarily show how many spots.
We have some more detail on the highway plans in the back. If you want
Okay.
to look at it, we can explain anything, any questions you have.
Do we know how many parking spaces we're talking about?
On the bridge itself?
Yeah.
I don't know,
3 or
Steve.
4.
3 or 4?
There's 3 or 4 up there now.
Yeah, we might lose one parking lane, one parking space, but if that.
Thank you.
The pedestrian access over the northern canal, is that just going to be the existing bridge structure?
Yeah, I didn't touch on that. I didn't get into the staging too much. But our plan is to actually build it in 2 stages. So we'll be building the, get there, it might make more sense. Oh, I think
Try to
it's
make sure all
there,
questions
yeah.
bounce back and forth.
Yeah, that's right.
Either one's fine. So our plan is actually to build this bay first, and although reduced in width, that's kind of the best we can do in terms of providing that 5-foot sidewalk during the first stage. And primarily that's driven by utilities. We're trying to, this is the proposed condition, but the existing gas line is in this vicinity. So we're trying to prevent having to create a separate support system for that gas bay. So the idea is to build half that benefits from pedestrian use and also is beneficial from a utility perspective. We're trying to go under bridge with all of the current, I believe all of them, right? Joe's my utility guy, so under bridge with the overhead lines.
So for the first phase, those 8,000 pedestrians are going to be into 5 foot.
I think we're really locked into that. Otherwise, you're going to get into some kind of supplemental staging where we'd have to come back and reconstruct the BR2 rail at another time frame.
Could you explain what that means, BRT?
Sorry, it's just the terminology for this rail system, which is, you probably see them all over town. They're short segment of concrete with a metal rail on top. And the problem is when we try to reuse our proposed ornamental historic railing, these are not crash tested barriers.
Okay.
So the purpose of this is to protect.
Show the rendering of it, that's a good reason
Rendering.
We realize it's not ideal, but we're kind of fixed to our width to our overall bridge, and we're trying to squeeze it in there. Yeah, so that's what we keep referring to as BR2.
And you're fixed on having those where they are for an engineering reason? That's beyond me, I didn't do so well in math.
Yes, that in terms of how long they go.
Structural?
No.
Well, I guess all I'm saying is I see 10-foot lane, 11-foot lane, and a 15-foot lane, and is this, are we tied to something that is an engineering design, or is that something we can move?
All of those elements are engineering design.
Yeah, just to jump in, the historic rail on the back, that will not survive a crash of a car. It's not what they would call, load-tested barrier per the modern highway standards. So in order to have the historic rail, there has to be some protection from cars going over the edge. That's why we use a safety rail.
But is that movable?
No, it has to be on the curb line to prevent cars from, it also helps protect pedestrians on the sidewalk. But the main purpose is that you cannot hit those rails if you hit them with a car.
I don't mean wider, can we move them in?
He wants more sidewalk, I think. Is that right, sir?
Well, I want skinnier lanes. Skinnier lanes are the best thing you can do for safety.
So could you have, I guess the question that's being asked is, could you have narrower vehicle lanes and more sidewalk?
Yeah, at this point, all the roadway layouts have been, based on, Mass DOT healthy transportation policies and highway standards. And at this point, we don't anticipate making any changes. I mean, we've looked at trying to maximize all the sidewalks, all the bike lanes, but we do have constraints, and we do have project budgets. And if you in certain locations, if you widen the bridge out, you've got even more right-of-way impacts.
Yeah, I don't want that.
So we did the best to maximize all the sidewalks, lane widths, and traffic lanes and bike lanes.
Yeah, this 11-foot lane is a minimum lane we have to hit. So anything you start encroaching, now your shoulder / bike lane becomes an issue. And this bridge is actually narrower than the approaches. We've already narrowed it up, so. Wider than existing, but narrower than if you took.
So it constrains in.
It does.
have a question.
For the Pawtucket North Bridge, what does it look like for, so I noticed the multi-use path, what does it look like for cyclists to get on and off that path? What are they having to, how are they interacting with the University Bridge intersection, or when they get off, I mean, it's on Pawtucket Street, closer to the dormitories, what does that look like for them?
So I think we've had these discussions, and I don't know if Steve wants to chime in at all. You know, we did look at the potential long-term solutions off of this. I mean, our immediate approach was to leave this bridge in a good condition that allowed for future options for better connectivity to the University Ave Bridge, but that's a little bit beyond the scope of what this project is under the grant. It really didn't entail going outside of those limits. I know, you know, there's certainly some things that are being considered to make that connection better.
Yeah, we did have a series of meetings with UMass Lowell and the city, and to come up with the best solutions. Some of those solutions involve later projects where they have to extend some of the transitions. We're doing everything we can under this project to, you know, improve the bicycle safety, pedestrian safety. But at the end of the day, you know, we're only working within a certain project limit, and there may be some additional improvements that the city and UMass Lowell would pursue at a later date.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, I agree. I got to just follow up on that from the traffic engineer. So, to Doug's point, is we're just constrained to our limits of work here, but there is a longer term vision that we see, and we have had conversations with the university, we've had conversations with the city, so we're kind of working with what we have. We understand, you know, at the University average, you know, there's some connectivity that we're working to in the long term, and the design will hopefully accommodate that in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're saying the bridges are going to be ahead of the rest of the surrounding curve, so to speak. Correct. Engineering. Okay. Great.
That's transportation planning. Sort of.
Any more questions? Comments? None? Okay. So everyone, make sure, oh, go ahead.
I guess I just want to reiterate, just on the Pawtucket over Northern, I just think it's very important to let folks know. I know some folks in this room understand this, but we'll be maintaining pedestrians at all times during construction. So at no point will the pedestrians for the university be impacted. They'll always be accommodated, and there'll never be a situation where they're going to have to go around the bridge. They'll be available to use it, and construction will accommodate that. So I think that's an important thing to note for this group, and understand that later tonight.
We do appreciate that.
Yeah.
If there's nothing further, thank you for coming. If you'd like to see really detailed drawings of all of these, you know, kind of concepts that we put out there in the back, we'll have people on hand to answer any more questions that you might have. And that's it. Have a good night.